Good day and welcome to yet another episode of Territories Talk. My name is Chris Famous of Bermuda, and I am one of the hosts of Territories Talk. My other co-hosts are Shana Smith Archer of the beautiful Virgin Islands and Speaker Shirley Osborne of Montserrat. Territories Talk was founded in 2018 to give voice to the persons from the smaller islands, particularly the British overseas territories of Anguilla, Bermuda, Cayman Islands, Montserrat, Turks and Caicos, and the British Virgin Islands. We have evolved to an online show now, and we are broadcasted through our media partners, Cayman Marwood in the Cayman Islands, Channel 82 in Bermuda, CBN Radio and Television in the Virgin Islands, and Radio Turks and Caicos in Turks and Caicos Island. So today's show is not only about community leadership, but about the next generation of leadership. And today I have the pleasure of the guest of today will be Mr. Aaron Crichlow of Bermuda. Aaron is someone I've literally known all his life. I went to school with his dad. Matter of fact, his grandmother was one of my teachers in primary school, primary one teacher. So I can safely say I've watched him from since he was knee high to a grasshopper, and he has turned into one of Bermuda's foremost community leaders. So without further ado, I now bring on Mr. Aaron Crichlow. Hello, Mr. Crichlow.
Good afternoon. How are you, Mr. Famous?
I'm blessing yourself.
I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
So tell us who is Aaron Crichlow? We'll get into what is Bermuda law, but we want to know who is Aaron Crichlow first.
All right. Aaron Crichlow is a 30-year-old Bermudian. I initially, wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do graduating university or high school. I've always been passionate about various different, things. Wanted to be an oceanographer, wanted to be a marine scientist, wanted to be an engineer. But basically when I went to university, I found myself exploring all different subjects from philosophy to sociology to economics to history. And I really found my world opened up. I went to Dalhousie University first after graduating from Work Academy in Bermuda. And it really exposed me to just other ways of thinking, other ways of being, and really exposing me to the problems that exist in society. And so for my own personal life, so all my grandparents are teachers, as you all know, Mr. Famous.
Yeah, so let's put a little quick pause. As we say in Bermuda, who's your people?
Yes, sir.
You
So
didn't just drop out of the sky. So who's your people?
yeah, my mother is April Simmons. Her father was Erskine Simmons. He was part of the progressive group in Bermuda, which led the boycott that ended segregation on Ireland. So listening to those stories growing up was very much present in my life, knowing that my own grandfather played a role in the fight for rights and ending of segregation. It was also on my father's side. They were both teachers, all community persons. Everyone who I know would know who Mr. Crichlow is, Cleveland Crichlow is. So I got a lot of respect just from his, him being who he was. He's still alive, still doing good. But that's really who I am. And my father's,
your
my
paternal
father,
grandmother?
my paternal is my surname's Rosemary Crichlow. So she was very much embedded in the primary, young age, kindergarten, yeah, education system. And so, yeah, very many people will know Mrs. Critchlow from teaching them from P1 all the mainly, yeah. So that's my people, as well as my father. He's also a teacher. Anthony Critchlow has been at Elliott since I went to Elliott Primary. Um, and he is probably one of the most, selfless persons that I really know, as well as my mother, who's April Simmons, who is one of the, most kind persons that I know. And so growing up, we would have so many like conversations with this family both on both sides around social issues in Bermuda. And I know when I was growing up, I always just wanted to, participate in those conversations to just add my own 2 cents. For the longest while, I was just listening and just learning and observing. But over time, it became, one of the main reasons why I decided to, focus and study philosophy in university was to really just expose myself to other ideas and be able to contribute um, to my own family discussions, really. So that's kind of pretty much who I am, I guess.
Okay. And which primary schools did you attend? I know you mentioned Elliott, so you went Elliott all the way through.
Yeah, I went Elliott all the way through, and then went to Whitney Institute for middle school, and then went to Work Academy for high school, and the IB program.
Okay. So after War Academy, then you went off to university.
hmm Yeah, I went off to initially, as I mentioned, I wanted to do marine science. So I went to Dalhousie University, which is like known for its marine science course. But I found
Mhm.
myself struggling in the math and the calculus, and it became. My father also encouraged me to do a bunch of different um, subjects when I went to university. So that's when I went to study economics, history, and I really found myself really gravitating towards philosophy. And so that's pretty much what I majored in at Dalhousie, studying metaphysics, which is like what is life all about? Epistemology, it's like what can you really know for certain, as well as ethics and studying basically what makes a moral action. So from there, I majored in philosophy and minored in law and society. I really wanted to see how I could put the philosophy into practice in a practical sense. And so that's when after that, I went to University of Kent in England to do the Bachelor's of Laws. And so I completed that, was very much interested in public law, constitutional law, and systems change thinking. And then I went to the University of Law in London, in Bloomsbury. And there I was planning to, stay in London to become a solicitor or at least a paralegal and see which area of law I really enjoy, whether it be human rights law, environmental law, or sports law. I had some conversations with Arsenal's legal counsel at the time, back in like
What? You
2019.
said what?
Yeah,
Who?
because if you know my father's brother, Craig Critchlow, his son Kane Critchlow is a professional
Mm.
footballer. So he left
Yeah.
Bermuda really young to go study or to go play football in Cornellà, Spain, which is like a feeder organization or feeder club for Barcelona. And so he, through crazy circumstances, was able to get in contact with Arsenal or with contacts at Barcelona's club. And so one of them, as he grew up, as time passed, some of the sporting directors from Barcelona moved to Arsenal. And so when in 2019, we were invited to come to Arsenal Stadium, have dinner with the sports director. And then I also had some meetings with Arsenal's legal counsel at the Emirates Stadium. And so the this the offices of the sports lawyers, the attorneys, the solicitors face directly the stadium. So it was really, really, really good experience, really cool experience. And for me, I really love Barcelona growing up. I'm a big football fan. Messi, Ronaldinho, Eto'o, growing up. And so for me, that was like one of like a big goal for me, as well as like in social justice, as well as just what I was, passionate about from an entertainment point of view, I guess. But unfortunately, what happened was the pandemic and COVID. So as I was finishing my degree, the LPC, the legal practice practical course, March 2020, came back to Bermuda because of COVID, and yeah, I finished the degree online, and then Black Lives Matter was also starting, and so for me, Black Lives Matter kind of, as well as lockdown in of itself, gave me the opportunity to really think about what I really want from my own life, what I want from Bermuda, what I want from society, what I want the world to, be like. What are the problems that need to be solved? And so, yeah, that's where the organization Bermuda's Love came from. And yeah, I guess it's where I am today now. But at the same time, um, as after Bermuda's Love started, I had finished my law degree. So I was back in Bermuda and needing a job. So my mother encouraged me to, apply for some pupilages, to become a barrister in Bermuda. And so I was thankfully successful in um, getting a pupillage with Cox at Wilkinson in 2021, and then getting called to the bar in 2022. So that's and then in the legal practice in Bermuda, I still practice litigation, civil litigations, which is basically disputes between peoples and companies. So I specialized in landlord and tenant litigation, as well as employment, personal injury, which is like road traffic accidents, as well as family disputes, family access, custody, a little bit of wills and estates, basically all those types of law that has very practical and relevant um, circumstances and matters of fact for people living in Bermuda today. And so that's what I kind of specialized in and worked in at Cox Wilkinson for about 2.5 years. And then I recently, or not recently now, but about a year and a half ago, now left Cox Wilkinson to do Bermuda's Love, the organization that I started full time. So that's kind
So,
of, yeah, who I
yeah.
am.
So let's put a pin on this. You're young. I'm gonna skip across the hill. I'm for Barcelona part, right? If you had an English team, who would it be?
No way, no English team. It was in Elliott, probably like P5, P6. Everyone had like English teams. It was Chelsea, Lampard. Yeah, even had Arsenal.
Mhm.
Thierry Henry, United. But I was like, no, I can't support none of these. So I decided to go for Barcelona with Ronaldinho at the time. So, and I've
You,
never
you,
chose. I've
you,
never changed.
you're looking for a social cause even down there. So let's skip across that part of your unfortunate part of your life.
Sure.
Um, so you went to law school, passed passed the bar, did your pupillage, were acting. I shouldn't say acting, but were practicing law,
Hmm.
and some would say at a prestigious one of Bermuda's prestigious law firms. And you had this epiphany to give that all up to pursue Bermuda's love.
I wouldn't even say it was a epiphany. It was more of a just see where it's gonna go. Because what I guess for me, I'll be honest, like law was always a means to an end in a way to understand what the problems of society are, as well as to make practical change and help people fundamentally. That's what law and understanding the laws, how we organized society. That was always like something that I always wanted to be knowledgeable on. The problems, however, for me always felt bigger than just being a lawyer, just being dealing with people's individual circumstances. I think it matters. People's individual circumstances need to be, you know, better. Um, but it's the systems in which society is organized that fundamentally allows people to live the lives that they want, right? So it was far for me wanting to do more than just be a lawyer. I didn't grow up wanting to be a lawyer necessarily. I wanted to grow up being like a judge or someone who makes changes to the way that society exists and functions. So it was, and my parents always understood that, as well as my grandparents, who they actually supported my master's in law. They had paid half of the cost of it so that I could go to law school. And so they said that, as long as you get the degree, then get called to the bar, and you can make any type of decisions you want thereafter. Because law gives you the foundation, which lots of people, as well as academics, advisors in school would told me, is law is very much a transferable skill, that you can apply to various different subjects. So it's far more about how law can help society as opposed to just being a lawyer and making a lot of money. Because one of the things my grandpa Critchlow said to me was, as a teacher, as they all teachers, he said, you have to do something meaningful with your life, that helps people. He said, look at me, look at all your other grandparents, look at your father. These are people who are actively making sacrifices and educating the population, the children, making society better. So you have to also think about how we can make society better. And so for some reason or another, that I guess stuck with me. Um, and so it was more about what were the problems of society, and how can law be a tool to correct those problems. And so I had no desire to make a lot of money or spend a lot of money. It was more about how to help people. That's always been, I guess, in the back of my mind whenever I've been thinking about my life.
Okay, thanks for sharing that because you know I use that. I wasn't saying it in a negative, but using that we have a society now that a lot of young Bermudians are becoming professionals, whether it be law, actuarial, IB, blah blah blah, whatever it is, right? And you find that with more Bermudians, in particular young Black Bermudians, becoming professionals, less and less or civic organizations don't have the same appeal or the same pull factor that they used to have for young professionals back in your grandparents' days, right? A lot of
Yeah.
young people would have came back from, particularly went to school in England and came back with teaching degree, and they'll join the Rotary, they'll join the Kiwanis, they'll join PTAs, a lot of Sunday school teachers, lodges, whatever. And they were saying though that volunteerism is there in the sense to say the amount of young people joining actively looking to volunteer for stuff is plummeted, right? And the
Yeah.
older folks who always volunteered their time have either gone on to glory or are not physically or in some cases mentally able to partake in these organizations. So I use that. I wanted to highlight that to show that you made a decision that was common up to about 50 years ago, but is not so common now. And I just wanted to applaud you for that. Not necessarily giving up your career, your career's on pause in order to, I don't want to say it's on pause, but you're devoting much more of your time to helping others than, as you say, making tons of money. The money will always be there as a lawyer. You're always going to find, you're never going to run out of people that are, not in agreement with each other. Let me put it that way.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
So, yeah. All right. So let's talk a little bit about Bermuda's Love. How did you come up with that name anyway?
Yeah, it's a good question. Bermuda's love comes from, well, I actually was listening to some Trinidadian dancehall back in like 2020, and there was an artist named K Lion who had this saying, Belmont is love, Maraval is love. So they had this slogan, MILBIL. And so for me, I just copied it. I just said, Bermuda is love. I like the,
Oh, so you, yeah, well, yeah, a lawyer admitting to copyright infringement.
yep, absolutely, yep. Yeah. And so it was because, yeah, the name was inherent in what we believe is the ultimate, ideal or duty of humanity is to love others. Um, it comes from the belief that at the root cause of many of the problems in society is, scarcity, fear, fear of the other, fear of not having enough. And so in order to counteract that, we came up with the idea of love. Love not in the, sentimentality, not just in terms of emotions or feelings, but love as action, love as a responsibility towards other people, you know. And that's really where the name Bermuda is Love came from. And it really speaks to the idea that the goal of the organization really is to try to create a Bermuda where people not just, recognize and act on the duty to love each other, not just from an individual point of view, but also from a systemic point of view, where we understand that the purpose of various systems, whether it be economic systems, political, cultural, um, social, these systems need to be guided and grounded in love, in the care and compassion of other people, of humans, that we have to recognize that we are all, one family, one person, one body, and that because of that, I guess, our who we are, our goals, our successes, our losses are all collectively won and earned together, you know. So that's really what Bermuda's Love really speaks to.
Yeah, I would interject, not in I'll interject to add on to it, right? Is that again, you come out of two families, at least two families, well, the Crichlow side, and you have the Simmons side, and then your grandmothers would have maiden names. You come out of four families, right? That I know of two, for example, that exemplify exactly what you said, right? Your grandmother, Mrs. Rosemary Crichlow, I hope she's watching. Hi, Miss Crichlow. Um, I started Elliott School in 1972 with Miss Crichlow and Miss Harford as as I'd say P1, primary one. Back then we actually said the word primary one teachers, right? So here you have this bunch of children that just came from nursery school, or some probably never even went to nursery school, and they're now in this big school environment, and they're crying, mama, mama, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't about the academics. It wasn't about teaching us. It wasn't simply about teaching us A, B, C, D, or whatever, right? It was about those two women. They didn't have any para teachers or teachers aid. It was just the two of them, right? Taught us about being together as school children, people that you're going on to spend the rest of your not married life, but community life with, right? And they exemplified what, as you said, what love is. It wasn't about, oh, you better learn how to spell your name properly, or something, and crack across your knuckles. It was like, come on, Christopher, you could form this seed. So that's part of sharing love, right? What your grandfather, Miss Dr. Simmons, did, in back then in class clandestine, he did for Bermuda. He and others did for Bermuda was out of love. They could have very well just say, you know what, this will mess up my career if anybody finds out. Let
Hmm.
me just, stay out of this and just go along to get along. And your other grandfather up until now is still writing prolific letters, Mr. Cleveland Kirchler
Hmm.
is still writing prolific letters to the editor. They're not long, they're nice and short and succinct to the
Hmm.
point, and he uses a subtle art form of getting his point across and without even, without being too inflammatory or whatever. So I
Hmm.
use all of that to say is there's persons exemplified their generation where they were dealing with segregation, racism, sexism in the sense that your grandmothers would have to endure all that sort of thing,
Yeah.
right? But they overcame it with love, not love for themselves or love for money, but love for the betterment of Bermuda. And I could say for sure that myself and many others of my generation, their generation, are the beneficiaries out of the love that they gave to this country. And now to see you carrying on the tradition, and in a more refined form or different form is great. So I just want to thank them. I want to take a moment. I know on the Simmons side they've passed on to glory, but on the
Yeah.
Critchlow side, I just want to thank them for what they have done for Bermuda as a whole.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
talk to them pretty much, more than I used, yeah, I go over the house pretty much at least twice a week, And especially when I was doing the philosophy degree, I was definitely having lots of conversations with my grandfather, Critchlow, about all sorts of things. So they've been a very much like grounding for me in terms of everything that changes in my life. They've always been there, just to be an ear to speak to, as well as just simply support. Um, my granny is very, very, very supportive, and encourages me, and thanks, and it's just ever present, and all the initiatives that we do now with Brenda's Love, she's there, supporting, spreading the news, is tremendous, and yes, it's amazing. I couldn't be more thankful for that, for them, for being who they are. And absolutely, I believe, yeah, absolutely, Chris, that like everything that who I am is because of who they are, It's very much like the Roosevelt Brown um, every idea that, we are just not just products of the environment, but products of all of the teaching and experiences that we get within our environment. And we have a responsibility because of that to share that with other people. So that's very much the ethos that I've been taught and that what I live by. And in a way, I guess, it's hard to be anything else but that because of the experiences that I've had growing up in particular.
Yeah. So, just as a point of interest, do you know where the Critchlow family is a loaded question? You know where the Critchlow family originated from, or at least the name? Well, the name is English. We know that part, but
Mm. Yeah, the Critchlow name, my grandfather says that um, his father came from Barbados, so it's a Barbadian name. And I've met just a few um, persons from Barbados who had the Critchlow name. Um, and then from there, it becomes, kind of at least unclear to me and further impossible to actually know where that ties back further than that. Um,
well,
yeah.
we know where it ties back to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah,
No, I say that in a sense because this show is Territories Talk, which is basically sharing is a show that talks about Bermuda and not just Bermuda, but Bermuda's connections with the rest of the wider Caribbean, right? And a
yeah.
lot of many persons of all complexions, their family actually originated in Bermuda, but somehow in all the history that we get taught, that part gets left out. So I just want to use that as a tie-in to say that because this show is being going to be aired in the other Caribbean islands, I wanted to show the relevancy of your name in with with other Caribbean islands, right?
No, I know my father's parents. They've been in Bermuda for quite some time, and we can trace their history back to about late 1700s. But my father's grand my father's father, as I mentioned, his father came from Barbados, and then my father's mother, her she was a tailor. So she can trace her family back to some parts of France as well as Turks and Caicos. So we did a family trip to Turks and Caicos quite a while ago. And
Mhm.
yeah, it was nice to see how the connections run deep into the islands. But yeah, absolutely. Bermuda, um, the connections are everywhere.
Yeah, so I want to thank Mr. Andrew Otterbridge. Um,
Mhm.
he and I have a lot of colorful debates, but he's my mate. Is all I'll say. So tell us about the structure of Bermuda is Love, and then we get into some of the stuff that Bermuda Love is doing or has done and is doing. So
Yeah,
tell us,
absolutely.
as from not necessarily from a legal standpoint, but I know you're not doing this alone.
Yeah, absolutely. So Bermuda's Love was started by myself as well as a few other, well, particularly my friends from Work Academy, as well as some friends that I went Whitney with, Elliot with, who I play football with. And so their names were, Courtney Clay, DeAndre Trotz, Aaron Ward, Shari Weldon, Eli Smith. Those were like the main persons who were part of the group. So initially I had the idea and then I talked to my friends from work. And once lockdown ended in 2020, I just went to all different types of parties, social gatherings, and was just talking about what the vision I guess I had was an organization that at the time I just wanted to provide opportunity for people to come together and build community, as well as specifically building community for the purpose of addressing social economic inequality. As many people will understand and, uh, you know, yeah, will know that Bermuda has lots of economic inequality, social inequality, lots of injustice, historical, as well as in the present. And so for us, it was about how can we bring people together to make change. And so initially we started with trash cleanups because one of my friends who I went Elliott primary with and Whitney, who was a year above me named Jawande Smith, and he had an environmental organization called Get It Green Bermuda. It was all about, he did lots of YouTube videos, clips, just raising awareness about the environmental issues in Bermuda. And he had invited me and one of my friends to a trash cleanup back in 2019. And so for me, it was like, this could be a really good way to build community in Bermuda in particular, where trash cleanups are easy to organize. You can see the the success once you've picked up all the various trash bags. And so after each event, after each trash cleanup, I would post it on my story on my Instagram or WhatsApp, just hit people up and say, can you come to this trash cleanup? And thankfully, lots of people, at the beginning were really, um, yeah, they got behind it. They said, yeah, we love the idea. We would love to be part of it. And so really, Bermuda's Love just grew from that, to whereas we started after doing trash cleanups, we were doing clothing drives, receiving clothing from the community, and then providing them through free clothing giveaways to the community, to anyone who really came to the event. We also started volunteering at different feeding programs, housing associations. We started our own, um, got some plots at a community garden. We started a scholarship program once I started working. We started freedom advice clinics once I started, what got called to the bar, as well as various other initiatives. And so the organization now is, um, what I frame as a movement in terms of advocating for basic needs as human rights. Basically, if you relate it to the past, we had the civil rights movement where it was very much focused on the right to vote, the end of segregation, civil rights, and then it moved to or what Martin Luther King was doing at the end of his life, just before he was shot and murdered, was basically framing economic rights, the idea that people have a right to food, clothing, housing, um, those things that people, those material needs that we all, every single human needs to survive. And so that essentially is what Bermuda's Love grew into becoming, as always kind of wanted to do, was trying to basically meet people's material needs. The idea that it, no person should be struggling to survive in a country as wealthy, as small as Bermuda. So essentially, the ideological framework is the idea that love is powerful. Love is power. We need to get power to provide and ensure that people are being treated fairly and love and with respect. Um, but we also use it to ensure that people's basic needs are being met. Um, so Bermuda's Love as an organization now focuses on ensuring that basic needs are regarded as human rights. So we focus on 7 pillars, 7 rights when it comes to right to food, housing, clothing, healthcare, education, justice, and healthy environment. So we have various events, as I mentioned, campaigns, programs that help speak to ensuring that these basic needs are being met. And from a wider point of view, we have in the structure of the organization, we have 6 board members now who have, I guess, are fully committed to the Bermuda's Love, the idea, the ideology, as well as trying to transform Bermuda into a better world. And then from that 6 persons, we have 7 working groups, essentially for each of the pillars that we advocate for. So each of these working groups, when it comes to food, housing, clothing, education, justice, etc., they're all about creating events, whether it be a trash cleanup, a volunteer event, a workshop, trying to build community, bring people together, build solidarity. Um, and then from there, it's about trying to raise awareness about the issues that we think are, important, whether it be trash pollution, fast fashion, whether it be economic inequality and the relationship between landlord and tenant, whether it be health inequity. Those are all the things that we try to talk about um, and raise awareness about and educate the population on why they should care about it. And if they do, what are the things that you can do to change that situation. And then from there, we also directly try to meet people's basic needs through various programs, whether it be breakfast programs, legal clinics, health clinics, scholarship programs. And then the last point each working group is focused on is about trying to change the system legally. So drafting laws, regulations, policies that directly try to change it from the current state where people are constantly having to fight for, or having to choose between whether they want to pay grocery bills or pay for rent or pay for medical costs. I'm trying to change it from a systemic point of view so that persons don't have to make those choices. So that persons always have the opportunity to have their basic needs met, and so that they can thrive and not just survive, but thrive and flourish and live the world that they want to do, be the person that they want to be, do the things that they want to do. Fundamentally, really, is how Bermuda's Love kind of operates as a organization right now. Yeah.
All right. So I thank you for those efforts. What would you say, just being objective, right?
Mhm.
What would you say to those who say some, the trash cleanups are good, the school feeding is good, um, the free legal clinics are great because I know what lawyers are charging right now per hour, but I know it's probably close to might be close to $1,000 an hour. But be that as it may, people would give a lot of accolades for this. But what would you say to this? To say some of your girls may not be realistic when you're dealing with, example, landlord tenant issues, in regards to everybody has a right to housing. Yes, that's part of, I guess you say, the Human Rights Act.
Mhm.
However, the reality is that the economics, whether it be Bermuda or any other island, similar size island, does not always play into that everybody gets a right to housing. So, not drilling down on that today. We'll have a separate discussion just on housing because it deserves a separate discussion. What do you say to this? You say some of the core ideals are nice but not realistic.
Yeah. Firstly, I guess it's about grounding what really is the purpose of life. And for me, it's it's not simply that life should be structured around persons who have housing and then persons who don't have housing. That for me is that shouldn't be the case. If we can agree on that, then it becomes how can we work or create a society that actually has housing regarded as a human right. And so I like to always compare it to other things that we have now. So for example, um, lots of people, Bermuda has, free education written in its laws. We have, the laws say every child or every person between 5 and 18 has access to free education. We provide that as a public service, as a public good, education as a right. We understand as a society how much that benefits, us collectively, persons being able to go to school, read, write, learn things, learn about themselves, the past, the history, who they are, able to use that knowledge to transform society and make it better. That essentially is the essence and the purpose of education. We recognize that if education wasn't recognized as a right or wasn't free, then what would happen is we have persons able to get education, only persons able to afford it being able to get education. And we'll see how inequality would fester, would become even more enormous than it is already today. So for me, the goal is, you have to understand that if we were to provide housing, for example, well, Bermuda's Love says housing as well as food, healthcare, clothing, justice. These all should be provided, as public goods, as services to the community, to people, to humans. And so because of that, we need these services because one, people need them to survive. And we believe that there's a human right to survive. And we also provide these services such as housing, education, because it helps to allow society to actually function and flourish. And right now, what the problem when it comes to housing in particular is lots of people are having to spend more than half their, wage on even more nowadays in Bermuda, on their housing. And so this creates a reality, a lived experience of constant survival, of always being in that survival mindset, survival state, where the only things people can really think about is surviving, is getting enough money to eat, to live, to have a place to sleep. Um, and this, for me, just breeds further inequality when we recognize that currently the housing framework, the way we see housing in Bermuda, is very much seen as an economic investment too, as a way to make money. It's a commodity. It's an asset that we commoditize to sell as an asset to make more money. So the landlord has the ability to hoard housing, to keep ownership, exclude it from other people, and then if they bring in other person, they can exploit them for wage labor essentially. So me having to have a place to live, have a place to rent, we have to sell our own labor in order to get that. And so we're commodifying ourselves in order to get an asset. So if we change the framework where housing is no longer seen as an investment tool, as an economic investment, as a right, as something that we all deserve to have, as we recognize it as something that is as fundamental to society as public roads, as public transportation, as public education, then it changes the framework of what housing should be and how it should be delivered. And so that means that we, as the state, essentially has more impetus to get funding so that it can provide housing to the population. And as we know in Bermuda, there's not a problem of lack of money per se, in the sense that, IB has median salaries of, $144,000, while you compare it to, what's it called? The hospitality, you got salaries of, $40,000 as the median salary for hospitality. So we see the economic inequality in of itself. And so for me, for Bermuda's Love, the idea is understanding housing as a public good, as a public service, and that these, as the graph explicitly shows, how few public sector units there really are within Bermuda. And if I would compare it to education. So let's say if only, Elliott Primary, for example, is the only public school at 3%, and then all of the rest of the education was just left the private sector, the private market to allow and distribute housing, we would have much more inequality that we have currently today. And so that's essentially the framework is a shift in terms of our mindset of what housing should be, not an economic investment, but a right, not a privilege to the few, but something that everyone deserves access to. Then we see that more needs to be done from a state point of view, to say that the private sector is currently failing us. Private sector doesn't care about human rights. The private sector just cares about if the person has enough money to pay for the house to live in. That's really much the Bermuda's Love framework, how we see housing. And so that means that in terms of funding, especially in Bermuda, when we look at Bermuda's context, we have lots of money that isn't, we have lots of avenues for potential, I'm gonna be radical right now. So for when it comes to, we have no, capital gains, no wealth tax. We have a very low progressive payroll tax, no income tax. We have we just introduced CIT, which, is corporate income tax, but that again only applies to the $750 million companies making that much money annually. So there are lots of, avenues and levers that, in my opinion, Bermuda has potential to pursue, as well as just the cultural concept of not seeing housing as a privilege for those who can afford it.
All right. Thank you for that. Like I said, I think your views, not just your views. I shouldn't say it like that. The diverging views on housing, specifically public housing, public supplied housing, deserves a show in itself. So I think that could be something that you and your board want to think about if you'd like to come back another time and talk on specifically on what Bermuda's Love views are in regards to housing. Then the door is always open for you, right? As radical as it as radical as it may sound.
Yeah. But again, for me, it's all grounded in love, that these economic systems, these cultural, social systems should be guided by the love of humanity first, as opposed to money, opposed to profit. So
well,
that's the system.
what I would say, and I'm going to speak wearing two hats: one as a Bermudian, period, and one as a property owner, right? And I still want to get into other stuff with Bermuda's Law, but I'll say this: Then a Bermudian property owner has to go to the bank and pay 9.25% interest on mortgages. The bank ain't taking love as as currency, right?
Yep.
Then you have to hire a plumber to come in the middle of the night to fix a line that just broke. You can't pay the plumber with love. Then you have to pay a lawyer for conveyance fees. You can't go to the lawyer for love, right? So
Absolutely.
I'm saying that there's some degree of utopianism in thinking that we can just provide houses free. We can't even build houses for free, right? When I say that, even if the government wanted to just give X amount of houses to people, it's still a cost to government. But like as you said, we talk about tax, but I don't want that to be consumed. But I did want to just throw that in for a preview of the debate that we're going to have down the
Yep.
line, right?
Yep. No worries.
So I'm just gonna what I'm gonna do is just show some quick pictures. We got maybe like 5, 7 minutes left, and show some quick pictures of what Bermuda's Love has been doing. So it's not just old talk. People, you actually have you all do a lot of work, and you do a lot to PR in sense of showing people what you all are doing, right? So so take this. So tell us about this one.
Yeah, sure. So this is at our community garden, or yeah, the community garden that we operate out of. So the community garden here is at T and Tatum. It was set up, organized by Nikki Bascom, the Bermudian boxer. And so out of from 2020, lots of people were very much during the pandemic were very much minded of food insecurity. So for Bermuda's Love, it's all about building community, as I mentioned, bringing people together to have collective ownership, collective understanding of our own food resources. Bermuda imports more than 90% of all our food, probably has less than 10% of all its food actually being from Bermudian farmers. So it's about how we can take ownership of our collective food resources. And so we operate out of the community garden here about once a month, inviting the public to grow food with us. So the picture you have see some tomatoes growing, some mustard greens. We've had harvested some carrots, and we provide those that produce to whoever comes and joins us at the community garden event. So and here's our board. Yeah, from left to right, Kevon Miners, Christian Chingray, myself, Courtney Clay, Taya Wolf, and Will Campbell. And here's a picture from our Free Legal Advice Clinic. So we, Bermuda's Love, provide free legal advice clinics once a month as well, open to the public, 15 minutes per session. All issues, whether it be litigation, corporate, personal injury, employment, wills, estates, any type of matter we provide advice on. So I reach out to various other lawyers on Ireland, as well as provide opportunities for other law students to come join us. So that's myself, Yazara Gilbert, who's a current law student, as well as Krim Curry, who's a lawyer, a corporate attorney at one of the Bermudian law firms. Bermuda's Love also has actually set up its own law firm called Bermuda's Love Legal Services, where we provide, advice and representation on as low cost fee as possible. And it's
Not
specifically
free
for
though.
yeah, not free at the moment. Because
I
it
had to throw that one in.
was that sorry?
I had to throw that one in.
Yes. Not free at the moment. At the way the organization is structured is so the charity is Bermuda's Love, which can provide things free of charge, and then we also have the law firm, Bermuda's Love Legal Services, that provides for profit, but all of it, goes back into the organization anyway. So we specialize in landlord and tenant matters as well as family court disputes. And then here's a picture from our breakfast program at Elliott Primary School. So we provide breakfast to all the children at Elliott, which is about 150 students, ages 5 to 12 now, providing all different types of meals, is try to make it as healthy as possible from cereals to pancakes to French toast to scrambled eggs, hash browns, smoothies. So providing to all the children, um, and it's about fundamentally viewing food as a human right, about the idea that every single student in Bermuda deserves to start breakfast or start the day with a healthy breakfast. And so we provide the food, and then we also sit down with the children and just talk to them about what love is, what kindness is, what Bermuda's Love is as an organization, and how they also have a responsibility to share that love with themselves and with their wider community, with the school, with the teachers, etc. We also have an Elliott Primary Garden Club where we teach the kids about, gardening, growing their own food as well, um, which we hope to one day tie to the breakfast program, but currently it's a bit difficult at the moment. But it's still just about being present with the children, with the students, and just teaching them about how they can grow food themselves, how we can transform Bermuda into a truly food secure island as best as we can.
Quick, see that building in the background?
Mhm.
Um, in between the gentleman and the two gentlemen there. I think that's your dad there.
Yes.
So that was actually your grandmother's classroom.
Okay.
Right, that was primary one block. But anyway,
Yep. Yep. I think it still is. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I meant to say way back then. That was sorry. Let me go back. Way back in the day, that was the primary. That was Mrs. Critchler's class.
Okay. All right. Nice. Now, yeah, here's our blood drives. So we do monthly blood drives as well. I'm encouraging the public to join us in donating blood. Um, it's important, as you mentioned earlier, about how young people maybe aren't taken as much a greater responsibility as maybe they should. So as blood drives kind of represent, lots of older generations are, phasing out and not able to donate. So the blood drive, the blood donor center is always in need of blood donations. One blood drive, one donation can save up to about three persons' lives. So it's all about how we can take communal healthcare into action. And here's further pictures from the breakfast program at Elliott again. They're providing pancakes and cantaloupe. And here we also do landlord and tenant basically workshops with various community members as well as other third sector charity organizations. So here's a picture of myself providing a landlord and tenant workshop explaining evictions, leases, rent increases, rent control, rights and responsibilities of landlords and tenants to an organization called Home Bermuda, which is all about advocating for ending homelessness. So it's all about, for Bermuda's Love, very much grounded in community and in collaboration, about how we can work together as much as possible to address the problems that we think need to be addressed. Here's further just a trash cleanup that we've done in collaboration with KBB, Keep Bermuda Beautiful. Yeah, just emphasizing that this is what the organization was really first started out as, and now we do all the other initiatives, whether it be the breakfast program, the educational programs that we do as well. We have after school programs as well at Northlands as well as Paget Primary. We go to the school after school and just talk to children about what love is, what kindness is, and how they have responsibility to love and take care of each other and their wider community.
All right, so we have just before we close, we have a question came up from Rosalind Famous, who's my sister. She lives in Puerto Rico.
Mhm.
Well, you can read the question here, lawyer.
Yep. Yeah. I think for Bermuda's Love, absolutely. The framework that we work out of is very much based upon the Black Panther Party in America. So Huey Newton yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. So that's exactly the best organization that we've seen that really represents what it is that we're trying to do. And so the programs that the Black Panther organized was what they called the survival programs, survival pending revolution programs. The idea that they came together to basically create mutual aid networks within the community, within the Black community especially, um, providing breakfast to school children, providing education, legal clinics, sickle cell anemia clinics, liberation schools, a whole range of different initiatives to ensure that people were aware, made aware of the collective consciousness of what it means to be a Black person living in a capitalist American state and how they can basically change that. So that's essentially Bermuda's Love's framework as well. I'm trying to really build community around that in order to have the ability to actually directly meet people's needs, not from a top-down point of view, but also how we can democratize resources in general so that people have control over the food they eat, the education that they receive, the healthcare they receive, the houses that they live in. So it's really about how we can change it from a top-down hierarchical perspective, but seeing how the whole community can work together. So that's really the power of how we see love as working to actively redistribute, resources, wealth, power in of itself, so that persons all can make collective decisions together. So that's yeah, that's to answer the question. Yes, yes.
All right. Well, we definitely gonna have to have you back on because we're just starting to get warmed up. But the show is have to record it in 1 hour segments. So I wanna once again thank you. Thank you, Mr. Aaron Crichlow. Thank you, board. I forgot all the names. I remember Mr. Mr. Campbell for sure.
Yeah.
Mr. Chiam Goret, Mr. Wolf, a few others. But thank you and thank the board for all that you all are doing. The board, I would say the Panthers in disguise, all that you're doing for Bermuda. And I also want to take a moment to thank your grandparents once again for what they did for my generation.
Mhm. Absolutely.
And
Thank you.
as we, sorry, go ahead. Any closing remarks?
No, I was just gonna say thank you as well for having me on board. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I would
Yeah,
love to talk, more about the Caribbean and what your thoughts are there. From Marita's Love, especially, just to quickly mention, it is the idea is, act is to think, globally but act locally. So for sure, the name Bermuda's Love, is based in Bermuda. All of the things we do is based in Bermuda, but we definitely recognize that, we don't exist in isolation. Absolutely.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
um,
After all, you did steal the name from Trinidad, now didn't you?
exactly, exactly.
Yeah, I want to thank my co-host Shannon Smith Archer of the Virgin Islands, speaker Shirley Osborne of Montserrat, our media partners Cayman Marwood and Cayman Islands, CMR TV, which is the newest part of Cayman Marwood. They have their TV show. Radio Turks and Caicos and Turks and Caicos Island, CBN Radio in the Virgin Islands, and of course Bermuda's Channel 82 with the learned Lemon Woods, who shall be getting called to the bar soon. But thank you, Mr. Critchlow, and we look forward to Bermuda's Love Part 2. And please feel free to bring next time, have other persons from your board on because it, as you said, it's not just about you, it's about all of us, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
All right. Have a great
Thank you.
day.
Thank you. You
All
as
right.
well.
Cool.